Peace and blessing to all. Welcome back. For those of you joining again, I've had the privilege of being at every one of these, so happy to be here with you. We'll welcome myself, Cassandra Johnson, in a moment. But I just want to welcome everyone here in this moment to day two, session two of Amplify the Voices of the Global Majority Online Summit, and the focus is on how we heal. I'm still your host, Reggie Hubbard, and today we welcome you to again into this space for intimate and candid conversation about healing and liberation through multiple modalities, right? And I'll talk about that in a moment. Kripalu has joined forces with changemakers around the country and the globe who work to dismantle inequity, mitigate harm, steward our precious resources, prioritize collective wellness, and stress interdependent liberation. Earlier, I talked about interdependent as between me and you, but especially for the context of this experience we're going to have, I want us to think of interdependent between like realms. So we're in the fleshly, the carnal realm. Y'all, there's so many other realms out there. Like, I personally have a very strong ancestor practice. I know part of the reason I bust onto the yoga scene is because my ancestors were like, since you got your shit together, finally, here you go. So, like, my ancestors, people who were enslaved humans, but also free humans in an enslaved land, have given me such support in my journey. So I want to bring that magic and that energy into the space. And throughout, and this is also Mental Health Awareness Month, and National Meditation Month, and I've been remiss in mentioning that earlier, but what better way to uplift and normalize conversations about mental health and our meditation experience than by talking at length in community about these things. So again, shout out to Kripalu for their partnership, and I don't know if it was purposeful that we coincided during Mental Health Awareness and Meditation Month, but I want to give thanks to that as well. As we know throughout history, voices of the global majority, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, have been at the forefront and critical in breaking down barriers of systemic issues that affect both the planet and all humanity, while ushering in radical change. Whether that's been something such as bringing yoga to the West, fighting against injustice on the front lines of society, or simply, as we talked about last time, knowing when to take a step back so people who are doing foolishness can reap what they sow, right? So the labor of the world isn't always the labor for Black, Indigenous, people of color, because the way that the system is constructed usually is at our expense. So sometimes the best thing we can do, and I know from my experience as an activist, is lean back and let other folks figure it out and get their wisdom, which has been transmitted through me through the lineage. So now is a time that requires us to listen to one another, to the ancestors, to nature, and to heal historical wounds, to talk honestly about what's really going on, as Valerie did last evening, and to do something different in all of our practices. We enter this work today and always as an act of community care, because no one can be well unless all of us are well. And my addendum is, we ain't free until all of us are free. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Again, you could be any place in the world and you choose to be here. And I thank you for that. This online summit creates a compassionate space to humanize the healing process. The healing process is something that we don't really explicitly talk about. And using this conversation about the healing process to explore justice as a tool for restoration, to cultivate humility, determination, surrender, and just a little bit of curiosity on the path of transformation. As y'all know, the world is worlding, life is lifing. There are many crises that impact all of us individually and collectively in our environment. Post-pandemic situations that no one's honestly talking about, and other global conflicts in this nation, caused by this nation, but also in other nations. This event invites participants, all of us here contemporaneously and those who watch later, to hold these perspectives. So not go like this, but go like this and maybe go like this. So keeping eyes open and keeping our hearts open to explore pathways to healing. And together we'll lean into the wisdom of ancestral practices, the solace of community, ancient technologies such as sound and talking to one another, and the hope that manifests that comes with our renewal. So we gather today Again, virtually in the Berkshire Hills of Massachusetts on the ancestral territory of the Stockbridge-Munsee Band of Mohicans. I'm still in the unceded territory of the Piscataway Nation in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. If you ever call where I'm from Maryland, you ain't from here. It's Maryland. So we invite you now to place where you are in the world, and if you know the lands that you're on, please share that so we can all have an experience together. Because again, we're not here for your entertainment. We are here to create community. So please share who you are and where you're dialing in from so we get a better sense of one another. And almost lastly, Kripalu Stewards of the Lands in the Berkshires is a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to empowering people and communities to realize their full potential, mental, spiritual, and physical, through the transformative wisdom and practice of yoga. Our Amplified Voice series has been made possible through the generous gifts of donors. We thank them for their generosity, which makes this possible. But I also like to thank the back end, thank Morgan and Miles and Jess and the online team, and thank each of you for being here, because if there ain't no production and ain't no audience, there ain't no show. Right? So thank you, donors and back end and participants, because we do this together. As part of this collective space, we also will center our community agreements or online agreements, which you have received electronically, and materials related to the summit. They will also be placed in the chat for you to review. Thank you for reviewing them and agreeing to be here. So in transition, before I lovingly give the mic to Michelle Cassandra Johnson, let's take a moment to come together. I was so blessed in the last experience to play a gong named Shango after Chief Shaka Zulu talked so much about Shango. So I feel compelled to use sound again as our opening with this gong right here. But in doing so, before doing so, I just encourage you to find a posture that is supported by your energy, giving the eyes a break if that's comfortable, maybe closing them all together or just softening them a bit. And then enacting a sway. It can be a still sway energetically, or it can be as robust as you need it to, but finding fluidity in these rigid times. As we transition to a time of receptivity, learning, and connection, finding freedom in movement, freedom in practice, freedom in breath. So rather than me telling you what to do, you do what you need to do for you. Then finding a sense of stillness, maybe keeping physical stillness, but keeping a sway energetically. For those who need a deep breath, let's take it here. Inhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and pause. Make a sound on the exhale. Pausing in the resonance of this old gong. And as you're ready, releasing the meditation. And now, I'm honored to welcome Michelle Cassandra Johnson, who will be talking to us about spellcasting for a world of unrest. Michelle, I'll give you the bio provided, and then I'll offer my own words, because Michelle and I have a bit of a relationship as well. Michelle is an author, an intuitive healer, an anti-racism trainer, and a yoga teacher. Her work explores intersectionality, embodiment, and collective liberation. She's the author of We Heal Together and Skill in Action, both of which weave social justice with spiritual practice. And Michelle, I've never done this before, but especially since my stroke recovery, I don't take nothing for granted. So while I got you and I can lay flowers at your feet in front of other people, I will do that. Michelle has always been gracious, and whenever I would reach out early, because I kind of busted onto the scene out of nowhere, and I remember she was one of the first people I reached out to in my teaching practice, and I was just like, I just have a question about this. Could you answer it for me? And the form letter comes back. I got a lot going on. Your email may or may not be read. And then a couple days, she responds, and we had a conversation, and she was just so gracious and so kind. And Michelle, I want to thank you for that, because that kindness you showed me at like the end of the first year of me taking this teaching thing very seriously, it kind of put that strut that I needed in order to just do what I do. I remember we did this one thing with Carrie Kelly, and she was just like, "Brother, your wisdom is for the times. Like do not stop speaking your truth." And I was just like, because for those of you, if you've ever been called by spirit or ancestors, you're just like, "Why are you talking to me?" Just like, I'm really happy over here, but I got sick of hearing the chorus and just decided to say yes. And so your words then breathe life into something that I didn't know where it was going, but I knew I had to do. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that kindness, which helped create the beast that I've become. So this is part of your fault. So, dear yoga and meditative world, if you don't like this, blame her. No, Michelle, thank you for being here. And I just look forward to hearing what you have to share with us about spellcasting in these tumultuous times. Please.
Thank you, Reggie. It is so good to see you, to share space with you, to be in community with you, regardless of where we are at any given point in time and through the time-space continuum. And I remember the email that came through and my autoresponder and then us having a conversation and appreciate all that you um, are, who you are, what you offer to the world, and that you're alive and you're here. So, yeah, just very, very grateful and sending many blessings to you and everyone here. Happy to be in this space. And from the title, you might know we're going to talk about spell casting, something that's not in my bio, and it needs to be updated as being a witch and engaging ceremony and ritual and spells for collective liberation. So the bio needs an update. For those of you who may not have been in space with me before, my name is Michelle Cassandra Johnson. My pronouns are she and her, and I live on the ancestral lands of the Catawba, Cherokee, Tutelo, Saponi, Occaneechi, and many other tribes in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Um, as Reggie mentioned, I've written several books, all about healing, all about social justice and collective liberation, from different angles and shared in different ways. And I have a book coming out this month on World Bee Day called The Wisdom of the Hive, which is exactly what it sounds like. I'm also a beekeeper. It is about lessons we can learn from the more than human world, and specifically the laboratory of a honeybee hive, to help us think about how we practice collective care and how we build community, which I understand is one of the reasons why we're here today, and why this program is being offered. And also that community is what we need, and collective care is what we need to practice right now. And interestingly enough, this is not necessarily public knowledge. Not many people know because it will not be out in the world for a little while. But I'm working on another book about protection practices to protect our energy, and I would say it is the most metaphysical offering to date that's being crafted right now. So as I was thinking about preparing for being in this space, I was thinking about some of those practices and offerings that have come through me in this seventh book that will come out in 2026. So for today, I know, and thank you, Reggie, for inviting us to take a moment to center and settle with intention and come into this space. And intention setting is certainly part of spell casting. So we're going to do a little more of that. We're going to do a little bit of meditation, and in particular, casting a circle, which may be a new practice for some of you, or I might do it in a different way than you're used to. There are different ways to cast a circle. But I will cast a circle of protection around us wherever we might be, and invite us to center more deeply and to tap in, to think about what is present for us right now, and even to begin to consider what spells we need to cast at this time, given and Reggie used this word, the tumultuous times. It's a word I use a lot, the unrest, the just amount of sort of nervous system dysregulation and collective nervous system dysregulation. So we'll take a moment to drop in deeper. And then I'll share a little bit about spellcasting and how I'm coming into this space. I'll share some about the context because I think if we're going to contemplate our medicine and what we want to offer at this time and how we want to meet the moment and to use alchemy to meet the moment, then we have to actually understand more about what it is. And so I'll share from my perspective some of the things that I'm responding to, which definitely shape how I craft my spell work, which often is done in groups, particularly if we have a focus on charging our intentions for all of us to be free, which is something Reggie spoke into the space at the beginning. And after that, I'm going to give you a sort of spell recipe, the things that we actually want to have in place if we're going to craft a spell, and the sort of how we open, how we close, and then the between points and what that looks like. And I will guide us through a visualization after sharing that spell recipe, so that we can consider the cauldron of our experience in this time and our offering and our medicine and really feel into that as a group. And then there'll be some time for some questions and probably sharing some with one another, either in chat or hearing a few voices in this space. So that is the plan. I always say we'll see how it unfolds. I feel completely open to how it might unfold in this space, and feel open to co-creating it with our different energies and the different spaces we're coming from. So I invite you to find a way to be in your body. Find a way to be in your body, and maybe you're exactly how you want to be. I'm standing right now. You might be seated. You might be in motion. Reggie invited us to sway and then find some steadiness. You might flow between movement and steadiness. The invitation is to find a way to be in your body, which can sound easy. And I find that, especially when there's so much dysregulation happening, certainly within my nervous system and in the collective, that sometimes I have to ask myself how I am and then how I want to be given the conditions that are in place and given what I notice when I just take a moment to feel into what is present for me, what is moving through, or what is coming alive. Your eyes can be open or closed, or soft gaze on the ground in front. Your hands might be in motion, or maybe they're still, and you might choose to place them somewhere on your body that needs some care, some attention, or a part of your body that is calling to you right now and would like to receive the energy of your hands. I invite you to take a deep breath in. If you'd like, open your mouth, breathe out, an audible exhale, releasing the breath. And you can take as many clearing, cleansing breaths as you would like as we enter into this space and as I prepare to cast a circle of protection around us. Often I say the body holds so much, and sometimes we're not aware of what the body might hold. And so these clearing, cleansing breaths, and even taking a moment to turn toward ourselves, can really help us notice and release, if release is what needs to happen. You might settle into a different way of breathing, perhaps equalizing the length of your inhales and exhales. Perhaps Durga breath, invoking Durga, the maternal goddess and protector, the fiercely compassionate archetype and deity. You might breathe in some other way. The invitation is to deepen your breath, here and now. Presence is part of the spell recipe, and grounding is as well. And so, as we breathe and as we come into our bodies here and now, and this collective body, we begin to presence ourselves. And we prepare for the spell that will unfold from our time together, from our being, from our hearts, from our spirits. As you breathe here, I will cast the circle by calling in the cardinal directions, beginning in the east. As I named, you might begin somewhere else. And I will also call in the elemental energies connected with the cardinal directions, the east, the south, the west, the north, below and above. If your body wants to move and turn toward the direction I call in, as I call them in, you can move, working your way around the circle, or you can imagine this, visualizing it in your mind and from your heart space. I will begin by calling in the east, calling in the element of air, calling attention to our deep inhales and exhales, the collective breaths that we take together, calling in a space of the rising sun, of dreaming, of new ideas, calling in the energy of dragonfly, calling in the energy and experience of birth and birthing, of creation, calling in the direction of the south, the element of fire, the midday sun, and the direction the honeybees face so they can receive the most sun throughout the day, calling in the energy of transformation, of heat, which is often an element used to alchemize and transform something into a different form, calling in serpent and the ways in which we must and need to shed our skins, calling in change and asking the South to support us as we're here, as well as the East, which has been called in. Calling in the direction of the West, the direction I am facing, calling in the element of water, the flow, the infinite flow, the waves of experience, the ways in which water changes shape and form, changes landscapes, and as Toni Morrison said, has a perfect memory as it journeys, as it travels, as it tries to return to where it came from. Calling in the energy of whale, of salmon, and asking the West to support us and the waters of change to cleanse us and wash away what no longer serves us, and to hold us as we traverse these tumultuous times. Calling in the North and the elements of earth, calling in the gateway, the portal, the opening, inviting in the energy of release and letting go, reminding us of our connection to our ancestors, blood and otherwise, the various wisdom streams we emerge from, and the place we will return to, the earth. Calling in the energy of turtle, the energy of bear, and asking the north to support us. Calling in the below, what is underneath us, and the different layers of the earth and the core of the earth as we meet this time and meet this moment. And asking what is below, what we cannot see, to meet us as we are, to remind us of what we need to know, to push us when we need a push to change. And calling in the above, the cosmos, the stars, the heavens, the ethereal realm, the angels, inviting the above to meet us as we are, in union with our spirits, inviting our spirits to enact our soul's work as we journey in the here and now, this middle realm, inviting all of these energies, energetic forms, ancestors, elements, and the directions to hold us as we're in this circle today, and asking for protection, not a protective guard to disconnect us further from one another, protection for our energy, for our work, and protection of our commitment to creating conditions for collective liberation now and into the future. If there are any other energies, elements, ancestors you want to call in, you call them in, bringing them into the circle, benevolent beings, inviting them to be here with us now as we weave our spell together, a spell only we can weave. I invite you to take 3 deep breaths. And continue to breathe and gently feel the protection of the circle that has been cast, a circle that I will close at the end of our time together, a circle that will hold us. Circles have no beginning and no end, right? Their energy and the work that we cultivate here. Bring yourself back with intention, with presence, with care. Take a moment to reconnect and reorient yourself in your space, perhaps physically grounding by noticing the colors, the shapes, what is in your space, even as a circle is around us, holding us, maybe feeling your feet on the earth or seat on the earth, your body in connection to the earth. And taking a moment to notice how you feel and what arose for you as the circle was cast and as you were invited to bring yourself here more deeply. And I just want to share that I'm gonna put up a slide. I was making some slides for this and thinking, this is about spellcasting, so we're actually going to be in practice. And so there aren't many slides because it doesn't feel like this is a slide heavy topic for me. Um, and you'll have, if there are things you want to return to, there will be a replay of this so you can come back to it in the absence of slides and a presentation like that. Um, what I want to share though that just came to me is I was thinking about, well, how long have I cast spells and how long have I identified as a witch? Um, and I remember the moment that I claimed being a witch. It was many, many years ago. I remember where I was standing at the water's edge in Portland, Oregon, and I had on these brown boots, and I was standing right next to the water. And I remember thinking, like, now's the time. Now's the time for you to claim this part of yourself. And which means different things to different people. What I would say it means for me and what it meant for me in that moment at that time was, thinking about my medicine, my alchemy, and how I might amplify it and use it in different ways, in collaboration with energetic forms, with ancestors, with spirit, with the mystery, with the more than human world, um, to actually conjure the kind of transformation that I want to see happen. And so for me, this witchery and wizardry and magic, um, it doesn't feel fluffy to me. It feels very grounded in my soul's work and very grounded in why I'm here now and what is needed. And there's a way that I've heard spellcasting talked about and witchery talked about and magic talked about that has a very individual focus. Um, and there's certainly things that I do, spells and altar building and working with my cauldron on my own. And as I mentioned, there's a lot I do in groups as we weave together with one another. And even as I engage in individual spells, right, there's always for me a connection to the collective and the why, right, and the weight of the times and what I need to do in response to what is falling apart because I feel like everything is falling apart. And I'm going to share more about that soon. The other thing that came to me during that casting of the circle, besides that moment of being like, I'm going to claim this and be public about it, because, sometimes we hide. Um, and it's not like I put a big banner out and said, I'm a witch. There was more of a like, I'm fully claiming this part of who I am, right? I am many things, and this is a central role that I play at this time, engaging the archetypal energy of the witch, right? Of the magician from tarot, if that's a divination tool that you work with, and any deities that work to transform, to transmute, and in particular to transmute chaos. Um, the other thing that came to me is part of why uh, spells and rituals and ceremonies feel so essential, um, for me, and I think for us at this time, is I've spent a lot of time in organizing spaces and justice spaces where ritual was absent and where there wasn't a grounding in the reality that we actually had the power to conjure together if we engaged the mystery, or if we engaged the elements, or if we engaged rituals around the cardinal directions, or if we paid attention to, and it depends on your lineage and what you practice, the different turning of the year, the different days that move throughout the year where we celebrate, the seasonal shifts, where we release, where we expand, where we open, where we acknowledge death and dying, where we engage and connect with birth and birthing. And so, one other reason why this topic, and it's more than a topic, it's a practice, I've said that feels important to me, is because I don't feel like we can afford to do justice work without engaging in a circle such as the one I've cast to hold us as we do it, because the risk of being unheld is that we can't sustain our work and we can't sustain our practice. And it's more difficult to dream our way into the world we want to see and create, where we are free, where we do thrive, where perhaps maybe there is unrest, but we know how to respond to it together with one another. And there's certainly a disruption of unrest that is happening, and how unsettled things feel, and how dysregulated energy is right now. So one of the reasons we need rituals and to cast spells is because we need to work with this dysregulated energy, and we actually need to regulate ourselves so we feel more grounded and we're clear about our intention and why we're here, and we can go about our soul's work with more intention and clarity and care. And so I'm yearning for spaces where I can talk about spell casting, which to me feels like weaving, uh, feels like sewing. It feels like weaving something together with others that is rooted in our liberation and rooted in disrupting this human-made chaos, and which is aligned, that is aligned to us working with the laws of nature, which are about balance. They are not actually about disruption, even though disruption happens within nature. There are seasonal shifts and changes. The human-made chaos that is happening, though, is certainly unnatural, I would say, even as I hold a lens and awareness of the themes and experiences of creation and destruction and how they show up in many different realms, right? And in the multiverse. So I'm here to talk about these things and that awareness of like the moment of being like, you're a witch in this way, Michelle, coming to me during that circle really made me ground in like, why this, why now? Because I could talk to you about a lot of things, all about love and justice and healing, of course, and grieving too, right? I could talk about all these things and be used as the way, right, to show us how to be in community with one another. And I remember when Jessica reached out to me about this Amplify Voices Summit, spellcasting is the thing that came to me. Um, there's one thing I want to say about this, though, that it can be difficult to cast spells under duress. And it can be difficult to harness our energy and the belief that we can actually create something different amid the level of chaos we're experiencing. So I'm not here to talk about spellcasting in an ungrounded way or in a bypassy way or in a way that is just disconnected from the experience we're having in our human bodies right now on this earthly body and in this realm. I'm here to talk about it in a grounded way and hopefully a way you can apply it to your life and in your lives as you think about, as I said, what you want to create in this world. I don't believe even though sometimes I feel like I'm sort of at the whim of what is happening around me. And this is actually where practice has really helped me and reminded me that I do have some agency, that I can find my center. This is also how spellcasting has helped me because we're literally working in the center of an energetic circle right now and working with these benevolent beings in energetic forms, and the elements and the energies that want to support us in conjuring the exact medicine that is needed now and into the future. So that is how I want to begin with you with this. Um, I'm going to share one slide and then I will I'm seeing all the chats. Um, there's the share button. That was what the ancestors wanted to say to y'all, and now I'm going to get to my slide. Um, they just my grandma Dorothy had to say some things to you about that, that she brought to me in that opening circle. So, if you've ever been in a space with me, I have shared assumptions before. These are different. They're very specific to spell casting, and they're a little bit more about what I believe about this. And so I'll share this, and then I'm going to say some more about what we're in right now, that chaos that I mentioned. I already said this. We're living in this time. I have never felt this way in my body, is what I'll say. I'm not saying what is happening is new. The patterns are not new. The samskaras, the tendencies, they're not new. And yet, there's something about this time in my body right now as I feel into and sense what is going on and the level of disruption and disorder, and the rapid pace at which things are unraveling, that it feels different to me. And so part of the reason why we spellcast is to respond to and to create something other than a toxic culture. Um, it's also so that we can look at what needs to be brought back into balance and how do we engage our alchemy to bring things into balance. I mentioned the human made chaos. I don't think any of it's normal. And that's here because I mentioned nature and the more than human world and how destruction does happen in the more than human world. And that's, of course, increasing with humans' impact and climate chaos and that kind of chaos that we're creating. And I feel like it's important to say that what humans are doing, as far as our behaviors that are upholding systems that are not designed to allow us to be free, the way that we feel like we're in disconnect, we're not in connection with the more than human world, the way we think there's a, you know, human to more than human world hierarchy and we're at the top of that, right? That isn't normal. And I put it here because I think sometimes people will say, well, people have always been this way. I don't actually know if that's true. What I do know is I can point to the way, the patterns of oppression and how they play out and the impact of that in my body, and not just my physical body and in my communities and in the larger world, right, on a global scale. So I just want to say, like, none of this feels normal to me. And, when we're working with spell casting, we're sort of doing something extraordinary, right? We're responding to the imbalance and engaging sometimes things we can't see and charging our intention in a group with others, to create, balance and to respond to this chaos that humans continue to make. And at some point, I think, you know, we need to ask ourselves, is this the way we want to go, or would we like to go a different direction? And spellcasting can help us go in that different direction. We all embody the power to alchemize conditions that are in the way of our liberation. I believe we all have medicine, we all have magic, we all have power, and as I said, there are a lot of ways that magic is presented to us. This is rooted in liberation. So the question that I'm going to ask you in just a little while is, like, what does this mean for you? And what is the ingredient you're going to add to the cauldron? We have to cast spells for something other than our own individual gain. Yes, we can think about ourselves, but we're, in this web with every other living being, and all that has been, is now, and will be. And so we need to think about the larger collective. We can transform, I believe, the horror into beauty and to hold a vision for our collective future. And spell casting allows us to believe in this. And it actually allows us to summon energy we didn't know we had, particularly if we're doing it with others. Reggie mentioned ancient technologies. And so we cast spells from ancient technologies, archetypes, and different wisdom streams that we come from or that we're exposed to. We need to be in right relationship with these technologies, wisdom streams, and lineages. And what I mean is, we need to consider our social location, our identities, and where things come from as we're engaging with them, as we're using them. We need to be clear about why. There's a whole thing I could say here about appropriation and taking, from cultures that we're not from. So I'll just mention appropriation here and say that we need to think about, what does right relationship look like as we're engaging these rituals and participating in these ceremonies and using these spells. Because let's be clear, I can go on the internet and find probably a million spells for all sorts of things right now. And some are really grounded in lineage and some are not. And so I'd invite us, as we think about the medicine and our alchemy and how we're going to use it and the spell we want to weave, what does right relationship look like? And reciprocity is key. What do I offer in return for what I ask? It is always, always, always essential to, um, offer something, particularly when we're working with energies, when we're working with ancestors, when we're working with benevolent beings, when we're working within a circle. It is essential to make offerings and think about, what does reciprocity look like? Because we're asking these energies and archetypes and deities and ancestors to work with us to help our spell come into being. And we have to make an offering. It's why in ceremony, often there's a fire. It depends on the kind of ceremony you're participating in, but often the ones that I participate in, there's a fire, and we have to feed the fire, right? There's an altar for the ancestors with fruit on it, and honey and flowers, right? And offerings and prayers. I pour libations out at my oak tree that is connected to my grandmother Dorothy almost every day, right? Um, Offering something to the ancestors for all the ways they support me, seen and unseen. So I wanted to share this to just ground us in, like, what I mean when I say spell casting and the why, of spell casting now. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. I'm going to share a little bit more, with you all about where we are, and then I'm going to guide you through a practice. And welcome to those who just joined us. I'm so excited. Tam, your grandmother's Dorothy too. Thank you for sharing that and for everything that everyone shared in the chat. Earlier, I said that, if we're going to cast spells, we actually have to know where we are. We have to understand what conditions are in place. And I'm just going to name a little bit more about what I mean when I say everything is falling apart. Um, I'm just chuckling to myself because I say everything's falling apart like all the time. And I actually um, I'm not uncomfortable with things falling apart because I'm held. And because I'm clear about my medicine, and because I'm spell casting almost all of the time with people who also are present to the poly crisis we're experiencing right now, and how we got here, and that we can still be a contribution and make a contribution to change, and that we must really. Um, and in the everything that's falling apart, what I'm aware of is that, and I mentioned creation and destruction, that um, those are they're polarities. So two poles of experience. They live within our bodies. When we breathe in and breathe out, there's the death of the breath. And then we breathe in and we breathe out and we breathe in, there's the birth of the breath, right? Our bodies go through different seasons. That's creation and destruction happening. We're aging, creation and destruction. So just in the internal landscape of the body, it's happening. It's happening around us um, in ways that uh, feel to me at times completely out of control, and in ways that make sense. Like when I look at the more than human world, in the sense of the way that it's moving, again, although we're influencing that, and asking for the more than human world to adapt in ways that are um, untenable and not sustainable. Um, so I'm not uncomfortable with everything falling apart because I understand that creation and destruction are intertwined. I also understand some things need to fall apart. And when things fall apart, there are casualties. And what I am clear about as I cast spells is like, who's most impacted by the falling apart of these things, even if they need to fall apart. Um, which I think is a question we can ask ourselves, right? Like, who's most marginalized by the falling apart? Who will be impacted first by the falling apart? So this is part of of you know what I'm present to as I think about the conditions that are in place right now, because there is a way we can, in sort of esoteric way, we can talk about creation and destruction ungrounded, and we need to be clear. And this is why spells for me are about, particularly in response to unrest, about both truth, which is what I'm telling you now, and from my perspective, and about liberation. I feel like we are having a crisis. We're in a spiritual crisis of the spirit, um, the sort of disintegration of spirit and soul, I would say. Um, and part of this happens because we're fragmented, um, and systems fragment us. But systems don't exist just like outside of us. They live within us, and we're a part of them. And what I always say is that the spiritual crisis is based in our individuality, this belief that we were separate, even though we didn't come from separation. We came from a body, we came into a body in a world, right? We were never separate from one another. We came from a lineage, not from separation, though. It's not even true, right? And yet, I think our crisis is because we're conditioned to believe that we're separate. And then things fall apart because we forget we're in deep connection with one another and all things, always. I've mentioned nature, the more than human world. Part of the conditions, the spells I'm working with right now, and have for a long time, are about how do we get in right relationship with a more than human world? How do we understand it's not something that is separate from us? How do we care for it? What does alignment feel like in the body? And there's a whole spell for alignment we could do, right? What does that feel like in the body? What does it mean to create that in our world? I would say now I've mentioned dysregulation that I think there's a level of overwhelm, a level of activation, a level of reactivity that I've not experienced before experienced ever. Like it's and that's part of the condition, right? That's part of what's in place. It's part of what's moving us away from presencing ourselves, which is part of the spell recipe, and grounding in our bodies enough to conjure what we want and what we need for the collective. Um, I also think there, and I called in snake at the beginning, when I called in the south, the serpent. I think there's a lot of shedding happening right now. It's death and destruction and shedding and letting go. And some things need to be let go. And again, there are consequences to that. There's an experience that we have based on our identities and our ancestry and where we come from and how this shedding affects us. I also want to name that while everything's falling apart, um, we bring ourselves to our spells. And we bring our resilience, right? We bring our care in our circle. We bring our ancestors. We bring ancestral technologies with us. We bring wisdom that we may not even have words for, right? It lives within us. It's in our cells and our tissues. We bring creativity. Spells are deeply creative. We bring creativity with us. So while I think everything's falling apart, and that's part of the story that I'm responding to right now, and attending to right now in the collective, I'm also present to what is holding us, just like the energetic circle that is here is holding us, right? The casting of a circle is holding us, which we can do in different ways. Um, Anytime we might need, right, to come back to center, to cast this circle of protection, or cast a circle to support our intentions for our spell, right, or cast a circle of care, or cast a circle that will support us in channeling what needs to be spoken and shared, right, or to cast a circle that will support us in weaving the spell that's needed at the time. So there's more, but that's what I'm going to say about what I think is here now. And I want to invite you to take a moment to reflect. And then I'm going to guide us through a visualization where within our circle, there is a cauldron. I want to invite you to think about, I've said, like, here's what I think's happening. Here's the unrest, right? And I've shared just a little bit about why there's unrest and also that it's not new. I've also shared about the importance of spells and why now. Um, and I want to invite you to think about your medicine, right? I've said I have medicine, I have alchemy, we all have it. And so I'm going to put this question in chat. There are two questions I want to offer to you to respond to. And one is, given our current condition and that we live in a world of unrest, what's needed to meet this unrest, right? How do we meet the unrest is the essence of that question. And the other is, what is your unique alchemy or offering? Right? So we use different words, but as we think about spellcasting, we're alchemizing things. So what's your alchemy? What's your medicine? What's your imperfect offering? To if we bring in Leonard Cohen, right? Like, what is it? And I want to give you just a couple of minutes to reflect on one or both of the questions, and um, then I'm going to invite you to share. And yeah, people are already doing that, so you can reflect on this. You can put it in the chat when something comes through, and I'll read them out in just a moment. What is your medicine? What's your alchemy? And how do we meet the unrest? Okay, I'm going to start reading some off as they come in and appreciate all of the chats that are here. Just catching up on them now. Okay. So I see love is what we need. My offering is healing. We have beauty. We have gratitude. We have community, stillness. My offering is slowing down. Love, dance, movement, meditation, and mindfulness. Active peace is needed. Sound, authenticity, convening ability, community creation. Deep compassion is needed. My offering is joy. Meet the unrest with wisdom. Love. kindness, community, art, and community through art, collecting the narratives of the elders before they transition to ancestors. My offering is witnessing and listening to your stories, communing together in joy and rest, compassion, my light and my empathetic energy. We meet the unrest by embracing the stillness and silence and meeting everything with love. Art, music, dance, and humor when possible, truth telling, compassion, nurturing, kindness. My medicine is simplification. I started learning more about my lineage. Reconnecting with my ancestors has been key to healing, connecting to our own humanity, yes, and to the humanity in others. Understanding gratitude, stay grounded inside ourselves, to our hearts, so that we can connect with each other in supportive ways. More love, courage, peace, joy, a reckoning with truth, absolutely. And teaching about alkaline lifestyle, Ayurveda, meditation, holistic therapy, compassion, and gratitude, using death and letting go as a teacher, absolutely. There are just a few more people need to be seen and heard and understood by others as themselves. My offer is listening, meditation, and speaking my truth with love and honesty. I love reading these for many reasons, but I can feel how we're weaving a spell and naming what we're offering and hearing them out loud. I can like feel it in my body. A deep, profound love for the natural world, listening, grounded love for all. My offering is peace, fun, joy, especially with children, healing generational trauma, radical self-care, love, community movement, compassion, empathy, presence, truth, love, peace, and calm, more of that, connection and community, medicine of loving and space holding community, meeting the unrest with openness, love, gratitude, and mindfulness and inner knowing and strength. My smile, poetry, art, music, love, mindfulness. You can keep putting them in, and I'll read some more in a minute, share a tiny bit as we enter into experience where we're going to imagine placing these things you've just offered into a cauldron. Joy, radical acceptance, meditation, listening, keeping it real. Yes. Hello, Ben. That is a way to meet the unrest. Um, we are not separate. Regulating my nervous system is my medicine. My offering is my shoulder. Spaciousness and compassion, consuming chaos. Yeah, so keep putting them in. If I didn't read them, I will weave them into the visualization, radical self-care and self-forgiveness. So they'll be named as well in that. And as I said, I could like feel even the building, in a spell, there's a arc of experience in anything really, any experience we have, right? There's this arc that happens, and I could feel it in the cadence um, that I was using to speak those into the space, and then the sort of slowing down at the end of that, and the energy that was built, and the resonance, and the connection, and the community that you're building as you share, what is my medicine, and as we witness one another um, in sharing this medicine. And so I just want to name a few things about spells specifically, which, we all have our way and we have different ways. Just like we have different ways of casting a circle, the point is to have an energetic circle, whatever that might look like, right? With intention. Um, so I'm just going to name a few other components of spell casting and, take what you want, leave what you don't. Um, Often, when we engage in spell casting, there's some sort of purification process that happens in preparation for the spell. So I'll just tell you, in preparation for this, I took a shower before I came into this session because I knew I was going to be holding space and I wanted to clear my energy and I knew I was going to be channeling and I wanted to clear my vessel so that I could channel more clearly. Sometimes it's just washing my hands, right? Or doing something with water to cleanse. Sometimes it's cleansing with smoke. Sometimes it's cleansing with sound. The sound of a bell, or we had the sound of a gong earlier. Sometimes it's using the breath to clear and cleanse, taking those audible exhales, and sometimes it's mantra, right? An affirmation or a mantra that I might say to mark that I am transitioning intentionally into a time and space where I'm going to be casting a spell. Um, there is presence, which I mentioned earlier. We purify, we presence ourselves. Reggie did this at the beginning, actually, before you all came in from the waiting room, and then did it again when you all came into the space, right? With breath, with we're here now. Let's notice where we are. Let's tune in. Let's attune to one another. It's quite difficult to cast spells if our energy is divided and we're frantic and distracted and pulled away. It affects the intention of the spell, and really whether or not it will come into being. If we're sort of fragmented in our energy, we actually need to be really present with our energy for spell casting. I feel like I'm also, as I'm speaking these, giving you a like, it's like, how do we create justice? How do we organize with one another? We let ourselves know we're in the space with one another, and we clear away what does not need to be there, and then we presence ourselves in this space, right? In whatever way, whether or not we call it spell casting. This is like the recipe for so many things, that are about liberation. Then there's that energetic boundary, which I created when I cast a circle. You can visualize that. You can speak it. You can have a prayer that you say every time you want to cast a circle. So you can, often I verbalize it, but you can do it in a different way. So I'm asking for this kind of boundary for this space, right? And I mentioned circles don't have a beginning or end, which they don't. They're ongoing. And yet at the end of our time, I will close the circle, right? I said that to you. So there's this mark or sort of ending that we're going to transition out of the space when the spell is done, so that, you know, we can continue to be supported by the benevolent energies, and also any malevolent energies can get out of there. We're closing that. We're ending it. It's just a marker for transition. So we purify, we presence, we say, this is the energetic boundary we're creating around the space. And sometimes it's a physical boundary, actually. There's a circle that we're in, that's a physical circle made out of things, right? And then there's an energetic circle that supports that physical circle that we're in. We do some sort of invocation, which I did when I cast the circle. We call in our ancestors, we call in energies, we call in benevolent beings, we call in energetic forms, we call in archetypes, we call in animal energies, we call in whatever it is that we feel will support our intention and the reason why we're there and the specific spell we're casting at the time. We set our intention, and we can speak it to one another, which you all just did. In a way, I spoke what you wrote in the chat aloud. Um, or we can, if we know what the spell is, sort of acknowledge this is a spell for, this is the reason why we're here. Um, and then there's a moment where, and there's some ritual and spell components, right? We might have a huge cauldron that's 250 years old, and sometimes they gather with people around this cauldron, right? And it's over a fire, and we're adding things to the cauldron, right? We've set our intention, we're adding things to the cauldron to build some energy. We're charging our intention. You can do this physically, you can do it energetically, you don't need a cauldron to do it. So there's some sort of charge that happens. A cauldron's a good container for that, but it also could, the charging our intention can happen through sound, through movement, through fire, through breath, through dance. It can happen in some other way that we're conjuring, we're charging, we're moving together to create, to bring our intention into being. And then there's this moment where we see what happens. And what I'll tell you from casting many spells at this point is that something might happen in the moment, and it can be felt, actually. And often for me, it's energetic. And then days later, I might feel something else. So there can be, even if we close the circle, a slow unfolding of the intention coming into being, which I feel like this is important to remember. If we're going to cast spells for like our collective future and liberation and the generations that will come after us and the here and now, right? And if we're going to cast spells to disrupt the human-made chaos, I would invite us to trust the slow unfolding of it. I'm not telling you to trust the fuckery that is happening right now. I'm not saying that. I am saying trust the unfolding, Because in fact, there are some spells that you might do that go on for 7 days, or that go on for 9 days, or that go on for 30 days that ask for the cauldron to be left for a certain amount of time, or the ritual elements, the spell elements that you've used to be left for a certain amount of time, right? So the slow unfolding, the energy that you've conjured can continue to work, right? Spells are about work, like they're doing their work. We're working with them and energies, and they're working with us and on us and in this macrosphere that we're present to and part of. So we wait to see what happens. Um, and there's an integration period that happens too as this unfolding happens. The immediate unfolding where we can feel the energetic shift from the practice, from the work, and then the longer term unfolding that might happen. We continue to integrate. If you've ever been in a ceremony of sort of, I mean, there are many ceremonies like this. I was going to say any kind, but there are many ceremonies where, um, and rituals are part of ceremonies where it takes a while to integrate the impact of our work, right? And the ways we've been changed on a cellular level. So it's not kind of, that is the recipe for spellcasting, or rituals, this or ceremony, right? This opening, this closing, right? We're in an integration period. We give thanks and we close our ritual, right? That's part of it. The cleansing and clearing, the coming together, the energetic boundary, the invocation, the intention, the charging our intention, the waiting, the integration, the thank you, the reciprocity, which might happen throughout actually. But giving thanks for what has occurred feels really important in some meaningful way. And then a closing of the circle. So, um, hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful as we think about casting our spells. I want to lead us through a short visualization, and I want to weave in more of what you put into the chat about your medicine and your alchemy, because I believe you're here and we're here, and you chose this, right? This summit and this time with me so that we can weave a spell of disruption and a spell to meet the unrest and a spell to transmute the unrest. So I'm going to invite you once again to find a way to be in your body. Again, you might be still, you might be in motion, you might, shake something off, which is what my body wanted to do. Wasn't shaking something off, it was just shaking a little bit at the end of the casting of the circle. It's like feeling the energy. So tune into your body once again and notice how it might want to be. And take a few deep breaths just as you are. And maybe you'll return to clearing, cleansing breaths, or perhaps the body needs some other breath or way of breathing. Someone mentioned Brahmari breath, bee breath earlier. So maybe it's humming. Maybe it's deep exhales and inspirational inhales. And as we're in the circle together and you're breathing into your body, I want you to imagine that there is a cauldron in the middle of our circle, a cauldron that has been part of many spells for change, for liberation, for connection, for healing, for community. A spell that has held water, tears, salt. A cauldron that has held wood and ash, rosemary. A cauldron that has held flowers, cinnamon. A cauldron that has held cedar, rose. A cauldron that has held frankincense and mugwort. A cauldron that has held intentions love, grace, change. A cauldron that has bubbled, a cauldron that has given off smoke, allowing it to rise up to the cosmos. A cauldron that has felt heat underneath it. A cauldron that has been part of transformation. Imagine this in our circle. And as you imagine this, I invite you to imagine the ingredient you want to add to the cauldron, connected to your medicine, your alchemy, your soul's journey and work. What ingredient do you want to add to the cauldron? Perhaps it's spaciousness and the ability to consume chaos. Perhaps it's the support of your shoulder. Perhaps it's music, love, art, presence, healing, generational trauma, groundedness, peace. Perhaps it is being with death and destruction, the ability to be with death and letting go. Perhaps it's gratitude and understanding, kindness, nurturing, simplification, humor, light, empathy, stories. Perhaps it's sound, dance, meditation, stillness, beauty, curiosity, acceptance. Perhaps it's the process of reclamation. What do you want to add to our cauldron as we weave our spell together? And how does it feel to add your medicine to the cauldron, your ingredient to the cauldron? And how does it feel to do this, supported by this energetic circle that has been cast? And within this circle, with people who come from many different places in this time-space continuum. How does it feel to conjure with one another and to weave a spell that is needed now, so that there can be more ease, peace, groundedness, centeredness, clarity, truth, healing, space, and less unrest, less destruction, less disconnection. How does it feel to weave this spell together in our cauldron and to add a part of yourself into it? And as you've added your ingredient to the cauldron, just feel into it, right? What is present, what comes alive for you as we weave this spell. As we weave this spell because we're here now together. And we chose to be here in this particular space at this time. And now I invite you to take a breath and trust the unfolding. Trust the unfolding. Trust that something has changed from our being here now, and that something will continue to change, something for the collective good, because we have been here. I invite you to take 3 deep breaths, breathing in, thanking yourself, thanking this circle and the energetic circle and all of the benevolent beings present supporting us, giving thanks, and then gently bringing yourself back with more awareness, taking in your space, taking a breath. So I want to make space. I see there's a question in the chat. I also want to invite us to feel into what's present and moving through us. And there's a little time for questions if you have them. So I see Tia's question, which I'll speak to, which is, are there certain points of awareness or attention that we should be sure to pay attention to as not to bring in what is unwanted by our spellcasting? This is a really great question. And it's an entire chapter in this book I'm writing about protection practices. It could be its own book. Because you all probably know this. If you're doing any kind of work or engaging in practice that is um, rooted in justice and truth and liberation and love and connection and all the things we need, um, and the things that are true to who we are, actually, that there are malevolent energies that don't want us to do what we're doing. And there are negative principalities that do not want us to do what we're doing. And so I name this because I am here for collective liberation. And yet I understand there are negative forces that are not about that, right? They're not aligned with that. And so everyone's not here to get free, is what I want to say. That's what I want to say about that. And my focus is on the folks who are like, I may not know how, I don't even know what that means, but I'm present and I want that for us all, right? I'm like aligned with that. Um, and I'm saying that here now because sometimes people are like, don't you want that for everyone? Well, sure. And yet I know there are energies that are not going to allow that to happen, that are designed to be here and not. I mean, think about mythology and archetypal energies, right? It's as old as time that there is often an energy that wants to create chaos, that wants to dominate, that wants to annihilate people. I didn't make this up, right? It's in every myth that I can think of right now. So, to get to your question, Tia, I'm naming this because if we're doing what I'm suggesting we might want to do through the lens of spell casting or practice or something else, right? Whatever word you want to use, that we make ourselves more susceptible to malevolent energies attacking us. That's just how it is. We're raising the vibration. Energies are like, nope, I don't want that to happen. And I'm not actually trying to talk about this in some mystical way. Think about the time and where we are right now and what's happening. There are people who have tried to and have worked for justice forever, and the dismantling of that is happening at such a rapid pace. Like, this is what I mean. And so, um, know that if you're going to be up to this work, that you're open to there are ways you can protect yourself, but you're open to those energies attaching to you, attacking you, draining your energy. There's a lot to it. And so, what you can do is with your energetic circle, however you call that in, um, I called it in for protection today, but I also said you can call it in for other things. Um, I would say to you to make sure you're calling in benevolent beings connected to the intention of what you want to create or your spell to hold you in the circle. Like you use your language, but I would use language like that. Like I am calling in protection. I didn't call in just anyone. I was calling in directions. I was calling in animal energies that were coming to me. I silently called in the ancestors that are benevolent, right? That are healed enough to show up and hold the space with me. So be clear in that way from the beginning. And then there are other things that you can do. I mentioned frankincense and the cauldron. I put it on right before we came on Zoom. There are things you can do to protect your physical body, right? Frankincense, I never leave home without it. I never leave home without it. It's like on my head, behind my ears, on my solar plexus, because that's an area where it's a big energy center in the body. And sometimes I put it on the soles of my feet. Um, and so that's not an option for everyone, but I have something like that, right? There could be something you carry with you or bring to you when you're spell casting. Like I have a crystal a labradorite in my hand right now that I picked up a few minutes ago and just holding, right, to protect your energy. Um, and you can also say that any malevolent beings who I do this at the end who may have made their way into our space, that they leave, right? There's a very clear, like, get out of here now, which you can say. So there's a lot more. But most importantly, what I want to say is we are energy bodies and we can feel energy when we're grounded enough and present. And I have often felt when something has tried to attach to me or when the energy feels imbalanced. And so I would invite you all to think about what practices do you have that allow you to notice the shifts that may seem subtle in energy. It's like, going to a room and feeling a chill all of a sudden. Sometimes that means something, sometimes it doesn't. But it makes me curious enough to be like, what's in here that I may not be able to see with my eyes? Right? It's like just tuning in, or I don't feel so good. Like something just came up, tuning into our bodies, all the different layers of self to notice is something off here. Um, so that was a real long answer because I have a lot to say about that, but it's a great question and I appreciate you asking it.
I think we've got time for one more if anyone has anything they want to put into the space. Going once, going twice, seen. Um, Dear Michelle, thank you so much for your wisdom. A couple of reflections as we close. Um, as someone who considers himself a bit of a warlock, as someone who, even before the sound ministry bit me, I want to stress it is essential that you be in right relationship with your technologies. As someone, I play sound for people because it's the medicine that I have to disrupt the stress that's in Washington right now. So it super sucks here. And so I have been called to take this medicine to the masses to regulate nervous system so people can feel a little bit closer to disrupt the disruption is what I'm being called to do through my medicine of sound. And someone was just like, your sound is different than other people's sound, is like because I'm holding the intention to disrupt the disruption. And my instruments are amplifying the intention that I hold to disrupt the disruption. So I approach sound with reverence. And I even tell folks, like, this is not for your entertainment. Like, this is a spiritual attunement. So I just want to underscore from my spiritual practice and the medicine that I offer, if you are not in right relationship, be careful. Just be careful, right? It is essential that you're in right relationship. Um, And you talked about me mentioning ancient technologies. Like that was our ancestors were comparing notes because that wasn't written down. Right? That just kind of jumped in. I was just, then I saw your slide. I was like, y'all, that's all right. Yeah, and I just also want to just thank you for your presence. I mean, in the moment, I mean, your visage, your work and body of work, but also the presence with which you held us in this entire experience. Like, y'all don't take that for granted. To hold a circle and minister to a circle of conjuring this presently and beautifully is a gift. So, thank you for the gift. The last thing I'll say is this: you can't keep calling from the ancestors. You got to be in right relationship with that too. And Michelle talked about like calling in the energies. Be specific. Don't just be calling in ancestors. Because some people ain't up to no good. So just know that like this is available to all of us. I also agree with that. And be very diligent and reverent with this because there are things going on that we can't see nor hear that we are influencing and connected to. Yeah. So thank you so much. And do you have any closing words or thoughts?
Yes. Thank you, Reggie, for being here and reflecting back. And thanks to everyone for being on the planet now with me and us and in this way, and for your presence and practice in this space and playing with this spell casting. And I mean that because I haven't offered a talk which felt like a channeling like this before, right? And so it's fun to sort of think about this and how it comes alive and to feel that within myself. And all of you helped create that aliveness within me. Someone asked how to stay in touch with me, and so I'm just putting my website there. It's in the chat if for someone, a couple people asked that. And of course, continue to join the Amplify Voices Conversations and Summit this week. My friend Rashid Hughes is up later today and was in the
Next.
space and might still be in the yeah, next. So
Mhm.
y'all, you want some medicine, hang out with Rashid. He is a dear friend and a beautiful soul, and I'm sure we work together some and practice together, that whatever he has to offer, I know it's about archetypes, will blend so beautifully with what has been offered today in this session and the previous session. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I am closing the circle we have cast and releasing any energies that are up to no good, asking them to be on their way, and inviting us to continue to be supported by the spell that we've cast here today, and thanking the benevolent beings who supported us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Many, many blessings to you all, and I hope we cross paths again soon.